Die Internationale Frauenliga für Frieden und Freiheit hat im November 18 ein europäisches Seminar veranstaltet zum Thema Frauen wählen Frieden, WomenVote Peace. Das Seminar und die Abendveranstaltung schlugen einen Bogen von den historischen Feministinnen und ihrem Kampf vor 100 Jahren für Frauenrechte zu aktuellen Herausforderungen für ein friedliches und gerechtes Europa. Women from Italy, UK, Poland, Austria and Germany are discussing about historical women and their achievements and their struggles for women's rights, and of course the actual challenges for a peaceful and just Europe. Please get an impression of the lively discussion in the public evening.
Resolutions that I think were most important at that time were, first of all, they were very, very critical of the Allied countries that imposed the blockade of food. This is post-armistice. The armistice had been agreed, and they still blockaded food to Germany, Hungary, Austria, with the result that many people, many children and elderly people died. And they're still doing that today in the Yemen. That's what's happening there. So we've still got lots to do, I'm afraid. And the second resolution that I think was most important was that it was the day after the terms of the Treaty of Versailles was published, and they said this is ridiculous, this is totally unjust. If these terms are imposed on the defeated countries, this will lead to another war in Europe. We must have peace with justice. And unfortunately that their prediction came true.
So, as well as Germany, some women in UK have gained her right to vote in 1918. So it's quite interesting how this the story about a women's suffragist movement has been sort of contextualized in relation to war, because if you look at the women's movement to gain her right to vote in UK, there are different groups of women you can find around the issue of war. So unfortunately, those people who are very known in her UK suffrage movement, like Emmeline Pankhurst or Millicent Fawcett, particularly Emmeline Pankhurst, she and her daughter, one of her daughters, Christabel, they actually supported war. So even though that they were fighting for women to gain right to vote, when war started, they actually started to support war. And Millicent Fawcett, she wasn't supporting war. She didn't support the war, but her organisation during the war, all the activities around women's right to vote sort of suspended. So it's really and this year, for the first time, in front of Westminster Parliament, there's a sort of square that all these like famous politician statues erected. And until this year, there wasn't any female statue. So in relation to this centenary of suffrage movement, there has been some movement to erect women's statue, and it's happened to be Millicent Fawcett. So there's a lot of women organizations celebrated for erection of this statue. But strangely, there's the story that militant forces didn't oppose war is not something which is being widely shared. So this is something which is, I thought, very interesting. How in other countries that they shall we focus on women's right to vote or peace, but instead of like these kind of opposing war, I felt that UK's context is slightly more complex because a lot of women supported war. There's no critical thinking about war and the importance of peace. So on that celebration day, that usually peace groups gather together and hold alternative Remembrance Day, and we wear white poppies instead of red poppies, but that is not much known, or some people completely misunderstood, and actually some our members who are wearing white poppies had really violent comments from people who are wearing red.
Between Bertha von Suttner, the author of Wapenlieder, and Aletta Jacobs from Holland. She was also a peace activist, but before she was the women's suffrage member. In 1889, in the Netherlands, for the first time, the International Peace Congress took place. Aletta Jacobs became member. During that Congress, Aletta and Bertha first met each other personally. Bertha, the author of the Wapenlieder, declared to Aletta that she was totally wrong in her opinion. Aletta had to devote her full energy to the peace work, she said. She could better leave the women suffrage propaganda to other people. That work seemed unworthy to the person of Aletta, according to Bertha. Aletta has put forward that the ideals of Bertha couldn't become real until women get their full political rights. Don't leave the notion of peace only to men in the parliament, she said. Women had to complete their struggle for women's suffrage, previous to their contribution to the peace propaganda. The two women couldn't convince each other at that time. Bertha remained preaching that the peace of the world was her task and duty, and Aletta kept turning into the road that led to women's suffrage. In 1899, attended Aletta her husband during the Congress of the Parliamentary Union in Norway, but she stayed in the same hotel as the couple of von Suttner. The two women returned immediately during breakfast to the discussion they started last year in The Hague. Which question is the most urgent, that of women's suffrage or that of peace? Aletta suggested a compromise. You, Bertha, could, by proclaiming ideas of peace, very easily advocate for women's suffrage, so do it together. And I could, defending the political equality of men and women, explain the close connection of this question and the peace of the world. So we do it both. You take women's suffrage and I take peace in my agenda. But refuted that this was clouding the ideals. Or you are fighting for women's suffrage, or you are fighting for the peace of the world. These questions require the whole person, and they are not important to passing it by the way. The gap between the two women was not bridged at that time. Later on, Bertha declared frankly that whenever women get direct influence on the government of their country, wars could be prevented. In 1913, just before her death, came Bertha to attend the big conference in The Hague. She was also the organizer of the Peace Palace in The Hague. She was invited also to speak on a meeting of the Union of Women Suffrage in Amsterdam. And there she made a beautiful plea for the political emancipation of women. She believed in the power in which war could be fighted as soon as women didn't consider it as a minority. So, they were close. They were preaching together.
To tell you something about the situation in the Netherlands now, and especially the extremist right-wing parties. We have two extreme right-wing parties. The Partij voor de Vrijheid, the leader is Geert Wilders. Maybe you have heard about him. He's very much against Islam. That's his big topic. And they have for more than 10 years now about 13% of the votes. Then there is a new party, Forum for Democracy, a young political party, gets a lot of media attention. It has now 5% of the votes, and the polls say at the moment 8%. And this party has very, very nationalist ideas. So together it's about 20% of the votes. And it's quite stable, I must say, up till now. But the party of our Prime Minister, Mark Rutte, which is a right-wing liberal party, he wants to stay stronger than the populist parties. So he takes over their views. So the impact of the populist ideas is larger than the 20% the two parties have. I can mention alternative ideas opposite to these populist ideas, and I think the ideas we should promote. The first is advocate a positive attitude towards the European Union and wider European cooperation. The second is advocate a positive attitude towards the multicultural society, migration and refugees. The third, promote policies in the field of environment, climate change, energy transition. And the fourth is to challenge all proposals for more military spending and investments. That is a very serious problem becoming in Europe. And then we can use the slogan of WILF, move the money from the war to human and environmental needs. This would be the slogan, I think. But what I don't know is what methods we should use. And that's why I like to be here. I would like to hear your ideas of how you can promote these important views and to keep the extremist parties as small as possible. Thank you.
Frauen haben 50% Anteil an der Bevölkerung, an der Gesellschaft, aber in den Parlamenten der Anteil beträgt nur 30%.
There's only about 30% women.
Wir stellen fest, dass der Frauenanteil aufgrund der letzten Wahl noch gesunken ist.
And we have to state that since last elections, the percentage of women in parliament was reduced even.
Und warum ist es wichtig, dass der Frauenanteil in den Parlamenten hoch ist, mindestens 50% beträgt.
And why is it important that there are 50% of women in parliament?
Weil dort werden die Entscheidungen getroffen, dort werden die Gesetze verabschiedet und dort werden die für die Gesellschaft wichtigen Entscheidungen getroffen.
That's where the decisions are made, that's where the legislation is done, and that's where the important decisions for society are taken.
Ja. Wenn jetzt wir ein Wahlrecht haben, dass das nicht gewährleistet, dass Männer und Frauen gleich in den Parlamenten vertreten sind, sind wir der Auffassung, sind diese Wahlgesetze verfassungswidrig. Wir haben Klage erhoben zum Bayerischen Verfassungsgerichtshof, um das überprüfen zu lassen. Wir haben die Klage von dem Bayerischen Verfassungsgerichtshof verloren.
They have lost the legal action.
Aber wir haben jetzt dagegen Beschwerde zum Bundesverfassungsgericht eingelegt. Wahlorganisationsrecht obliegt ausschließlich den Parteien ohne irgendeine Kontrolle durch Gerichte oder sonstige Instanzen. Anschaut, stellt man fest, dass bei Konservativen und insbesondere auch bei den rechtsextremen Parteien ausschließlich Männer auf den Wahllisten stehen. Also politische Macht soll in den Händen von Männern liegen. Deshalb setzen sie immer Männer auf ihre Kandidatenlisten. Das heißt, sie diskriminieren damit unmittelbar Frauen. Das ist in Deutschland, das sind die SPD, die Linkspartei, die Grünen. In allen Parlamenten, wo diese Parteien, die selbst verpflichtend paritätische Wahllisten haben, vertreten sind, wo der Anteil größer ist, ist auch der Frauenanteil größer. Wie schön, alle Parteien würden selbst verpflichtend die Wählerlisten paritätisch besetzen. Und wir hoffen jetzt, dass wir durch unser Aktionsbündnis so viel Diskussion angeschoben haben, so viel Aufmerksamkeit in der Bevölkerung auch jetzt bekommen haben, dass jetzt allmählich sich die Parteien anfangen auch wirklich zu bewegen. Aber wie gesagt, unsere große Hoffnung, dass es wirklich tatsächlich zu einer gesetzlichen Verpflichtung kommt.